Welcome to Aurora Public Library's Meet the Candidates 2021. Tonight's event is intended as an information session in accordance with the library's role in civic engagement. My name is Risha Mandelkorn, and as your host this evening, I will begin with the land acknowledgement. We are all immigrants and children of immigrants to Canada. We gratefully acknowledge the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge the philosophy behind the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. This treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee bound them to share the territory with their neighbors so we may all have enough. There is one dish, one spoon, and no knife. In that spirit, we honor all who came before us, our own ancestors, as well as the Indigenous caretakers, named and unnamed, recorded and unrecorded. The federal election was called August 15th. Aurora Public Library invited registered candidates to participate in tonight's event on August 16th, followed by a call out over social media to reach candidates who had not yet declared. One party chose not to participate, one party canceled on Friday, and we are still waiting for two other candidates to see if they will come this evening. But we are pleased to welcome the following candidates who are with us tonight to respond to some of your questions. Thank you to Tony Van Bynen, Liberal Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora. Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party, Newmarket, Aurora. Tim Flemming, Green Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora. Speaking order was decided by random draw. Thank you for all of the wonderful questions that you submitted to us to pose to the candidates. Candidates have been advised to respect attendees by speaking directly to your questions and were reminded that there is no debate or rebuttal permitted. Lucy Frechette is working tech tonight. So Lucy, can you please go over the Zoom navigation and time limits that will be imposed?
Sure, thank you, Risha. And hello, everyone. Happy to be your tech support here tonight. So before we get started, I just wanted to point out a few of our features that we will be having over our Zoom session. Everyone in our audience has their camera currently turned off and have been muted. However, our host and our candidates are on gallery view. You have the option to change the settings in your own settings. All you need to do is scroll to the top right-hand corner of your screen and select view, and then from there you just hover down to whichever feature you'd like, whether it's full speaker view, full view, or gallery view. To help manage the time here tonight as candidates are speaking during their 3-minute introductions and their 2-minute Q&As, I will be holding up a sign. I'll be holding up a 1-minute sign and a 30-second sign as a warning as they start to reach their time limit. And then I will ring the bell at the end of their time. And finally, I will turn off their audio if time runs over. As for chat and Q&A features, they've been disabled. The questions have been submitted in advance by the audience. Our closed captions are turned on, which I will do right now. And so you'll see that as I'm speaking, the text is popping up in your closed caption box. You have the option to disable this by just hovering to the bottom part of your screen and clicking your CC live transcript box and disable closed captions. So again, that's up to you. And lastly, this event will be recorded, so the video will be shared across the Aurora Public Library's social media platforms. And that's it for today's features. So now over to you, Risha, and over to the candidates for their introductions. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. This is Tim Flemming. Thanks for coming. I'm the candidate for Aurora Newmarket for the Green Party of Canada, and I'm really excited to be here tonight. So thanks to the Aurora Public Library for putting this on, and thank you guys for joining us tonight and giving us feedback and questions on what are the issues that matter to you. This is my first time running in Aurora, Newmarket for the Green Party, and I ran in the 2019 election immediately south of here in Aurora. Oak Ridge is Richmond Hill. I've been involved in politics, not at the electoral level, helping out different parties in most stripes for pretty well all my life. And, I really think it's a very important part of a democratic process. I'm a longtime resident, 30 plus years of Aurora, Newmarket. Love it. Think it's a great place to live. And quite honestly, that's why I'm continuing to run and want to keep it to be a great place. I came to you today with really 3 little messages from the Green Party, and I'm going to highlight them for you so you can take away these words. So the first is a green future. So I'll be talking about that at different junctures through the evening, but that really talks about the application of renewable energy, the way we want to be a dominant player in the world of tomorrow using our hydroelectricity, the way we want to fundamentally leverage whether that be transportation, the way we do building structure, all of these things, and really energize our workforce to be positively in that space. So I think it's a great place. Secondly, it really is, our principle of living with dignity. And it really says, okay, every Canadian, we are all of essentially, absolutely the same value. So when it comes down to it, whether one struggles with, a homelessness situation or living far away from amenities or has a particular, could be a different race, gender, choice, doesn't make any difference. We need to enable, that's what government is about, governing their differences and making it, quite honestly, a fair and equitable environment. And the last really is a just society. So if you take the words just, really it kind of comes down into, we realize, our original Canadian citizens, the ones that predated all of us in many ways, our Indigenous families, we've been unfair to them. We need to treat them in a different way, just like fellow citizens right across the board. Whether folks are, treated right in our prison system, fair taxation, any number of things to have a just environment. So here we are, green future, dignified living, and justice. So those are the messages I'd like to take away through the course of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I'd now like to call upon Tony Van Bynen, Newmarket, Aurora, Liberal Party of Canada.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts in this discussion. I'd like to first acknowledge that my campaign office here on Davis Drive is on the traditional territories of the Wendat and Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples and the treaty lands of the William Treaty First Nations. Newmarket and Aurora are connected as any 2 towns in the country. Our kids go to school and play soccer together. Our local economies depend on each other, and our businesses employ our neighbors from both sides of the St. John Side Road. When we made decisions during my time as mayor in Newmarket, we knew that it would impact our friends in Aurora, and we were able to establish a number of mutually beneficial arrangements. And as your member of parliament these past 2 years, I've worked as closely with both Mayor Maracas and community leaders and organizations in Aurora as I have with the ones in Newmarket. Elections are about choices about who you want to represent you and about exactly what you want those people to do. As we come through this pandemic, we're going to need experienced leadership, an MP who can work with everyone to support our community through the recovery. That's the kind of leadership that I've tried to show over the last 2 decades that I've served our communities. And it's the kind of leadership I've tried to bring to supporting everyone during this pandemic. In this election, we can choose to keep making progress where the status quo won't do. And we can continue to build a community that all of us can be proud to call home. That's what I stand for, and that's what I want to continue to work towards as your member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I would like to now call upon Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, first of all, to the Aurora Public Library for the opportunity to speak with residents this evening. My name is Yvonne Kelly. I am a social worker, have worked in community development for over 30 years, and currently work as a community and partnership developer with the York Region District School Board. I am the chair of the Social Planning Council and co-founder of the Affordable Housing Coalition, both of York Region. I am married, have 5 children, 2 grandchildren, and 1 on the way. This is my 3rd time running federally for the NDP in Newmarket, Aurora. I'm running to continue to build a progressive movement for change in this riding and across the region. I started working in this community on issues of anti-poverty and fair wages in 2009. And today I'm really proud to say that we are affecting change and bringing more young people into the work and the conversations to secure quality of life for them and future generations. My challenge to everyone is to embrace a bold vision of what Canada can be. COVID has shown us that if we want a future for the next generation, that investments in communities, in our care economy, our healthcare, are more important than ever. It is also the best way to realize the potential in people and benefit together as a society, both economically and socially. How do we do that? First, we acknowledge that and don't repeat the failed policies that have brought us to where we are, where half of Canadians don't have any savings, many can't afford their medications, students are saddled with crippling debt, and the one thing that 99% of us take for granted every day, clean drinking water, continues to be denied to Indigenous peoples. How long will we settle for this? During the pandemic, we witnessed how cuts to healthcare and privatization of long-term care literally had life and death consequences. How real estate speculation led to exorbitant housing costs and the displacement of individuals and families that can no longer afford to live here in the riding. The communities struggling pre-pandemic were the hardest hit: women, racialized communities, and the poor. And while frontline workers were risking their lives, small businesses were struggling, and families were losing their homes, large corporations were profiting off of this pandemic. The Liberals may tell you that you only have 2 real choices tonight, and to vote progressive that you must choose them. But the NDP is your truly progressive choice. We have a plan to lift all of us up, one that recognizes the urgency of the time we are in, and that is consistent with our values of social, economic, racial, gender, and environmental justice. Are you ready for such a plan that ensures all Canadians only have to work at 1 good job instead of 2 or 3? Is it time for electoral reform that 70% of Canadians are in favor of, and fair, progressive taxation that will generate the revenue needed to invest in a brighter future? Is it time to enact immediate and ambitious climate change efforts before it's too late? I ask because these issues have direct consequences for all of us. We cannot go back. We must set the bar high and believe that a better world is possible. That is my promise to you if you elect me as your next MP for Newmarket, Aurora. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. So Yvonne, you in rotation are now first to answer the first of our questions from our community. And it is, what will your party do for the Indigenous communities that still do not have access to clean water?
I'm looking for the unmute button. So our party is committed to clean drinking water, and that will be a first commitment and priority as we take office after September 20th. It's been far too long. I think most recently, Justin Trudeau said that it would maybe take another 5 years to lift all those boil water advisories when this was promised a good 11 years ago. So we are going to invest definitely in addressing the clean water issue, as well as other issues that plague First Nations, Indigenous peoples. 1 in 5 live in safe and unsecure housing that isn't safe or is ridden with mold or really bad conditions. So we want to make sure that we take care of that. We want to make sure that we're addressing issues around missing and murdered Indigenous women. So it goes beyond water. It goes to recognizing that we've made commitments to the Indigenous people in our Truth and Reconciliation Agreement. We have recommendations to follow. There's no reason to not work on this right now. It just takes political will. The money is there. And if we actually stop taking Indigenous peoples to court, which is costing us millions of dollars to try and debate whether or not we need to increase funding for various basic services, this is money that we could reinvest in making sure that this gets taken care of. This is the first priority. No one else in Canada would even think about not having clean drinking water every day. And so this would have been taken care of much longer if we had more political will. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. And Tim, could you speak to that question, please, next?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting topic because it's probably the one that inspired me most to join the Green Party 4 years ago. I didn't mention it up front, but prior to my experience here, I was always in operations, big company stuff that we would do. And when I heard about the drinking water, I put it into context and said, boy, oh boy, this must be a staggering multi-billion-dollar expenditure, overwhelmingly. It isn't. This is actually quite finite. We are talking about 200 plus communities. We are talking about communities that have been sometimes waiting for over 25 years. It's ridiculous. And when I say inspired to move forward, in our budget of $200+ billion, we cannot find the equivalency of $200 million. To put a proper plant in most facilities, it would be less than $750 to $1 million. It's beyond ridiculous. We do not treat the Indigenous folks like fellow citizens. We treat them like secondary. So we need to just once in a while exactly do what we're committed. This could be done in the first year, period. Anything else is ridiculous, inexcusable. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. And if I could ask Tony Van Bynen to go next.
Great, thank you. Well, we've been working on reducing the boil water advisories since 2015. And I need to remind everybody that we've completed or are implementing 80% of our calls to action, and we've eliminated 110 drinking water advisories. I don't necessarily accept the fact that it could be done in a year. I think this is complex. You're dealing with very extensive geographies. And in addition to building the facilities, there's also the need for us to make sure that the training levels are there so that the systems can be operated effectively, independently, and on a sustainable basis by the Indigenous communities. There's no question that there's more work to be done, but I can say to you that we've done more work during our period than has been done in more than 50 years. And while it's easy to criticize, let's recognize that some real progress has been made, and I'll stand on that record.
Thank you, Tony. The next question, it will go to Yvonne first. And the question is, given the large deficit we have incurred related to the pandemic and the many new spending promises each party is making during the campaign, how will your party ensure long-term fiscal management so that we return to and maintain a prudent debt level?
Thank you for the question, Risha. So when we look at the debt and we look at the deficit, it's important to remember that for 30 years, we haven't been taxing corporations anywhere close to the rate that we did post-war, when we were able to provide a lot of important public services and build those services to support Canadians. So the NDP actually has a really good proven track record provincially on keeping debts down, debt to GDP ratio, and keeping spending in check. So we will be prudent and fiscally responsible and attack the deficit when it's prudent to do so. In the meantime, we would invest in Canadians because that's the best way to ensure a long-term recovery. So we will look at revenues that haven't been raised, and we will raise those revenues through a 1% wealth tax, which all the other parties all agreed not to implement during this last few months, and also close tax havens and loopholes and increase the accountability mechanism of the CRA to be able to go after uncollected taxes from corporations. And also the largest, the wealthiest Canadians over 200 million, we would also increase their taxes. Or we would give them a wealth tax as well as a 2% increase on the highest tax rate for regular folks, but not middle class and working class folks. So there's ways of generating revenue, and also there's cost savings when you do the right thing. When you invest in Canadians and they're back to work and they're paying taxes, that also goes a long way to addressing long-term deficits. So it does surprise me that when we talk about this, austerity and cutting programs becomes the first go-to when we aren't talking about all the untapped taxes that we haven't collected for many, many years on the highest earners and the wealthiest corporations. So that's what we would do. We'd return to an 18% corporate tax rate like pre-2010 levels. And this is how we're going to do it.
Thank you, Yvonne. Tim Flemming is up next.
Hi, thanks. The deficit is currently, as we know, the current government is borrowing $420 million plus per day just to fund the deficit, to fund the interest on the deficit. And this is at ridiculously low long-term rates. I think we all share a great anxiety on how we're going to pass this to our children and grandchildren. So all political parties, green intended, have to have that blended consortium to say, lift a little at the top and close up the expense at the bottom, or this is going to be tantamount to potentially a very serious fiscal situation. How? It starts with the pennies take care of the nickels and dimes. It starts with a $650 million election that we're in right now. It starts with a $20 million, $21 million Senate that operates each and every year. Certainly it operates, there are taxation opportunities, but Canadians are already at the end of July to Tax Freedom Day. So we need to manage our expenditures to some degree to within 5 to 8 years. And there's no firm platform from the Green as well. I'm not saying that, but we just need to address the expenditures in a much more fiscally managerial way and eliminate some programs. There are a lot of great programs. We have to prioritize, and we have to take some things that are no longer, maybe we're dated and they're no longer on the table, and replace them with other elements. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Tim. Tony, would you speak to this question, please?
Great, thank you. I've always been an advocate of a sensible fiscal approach. And what we've been able to do is to balance the emergency spending that we've had to do with our long-term fiscal stability. And as the Parliamentary Budget Officer says, we do have the ability to sustain the debt that we have and comfortably manage that debt so that it doesn't become a burden for the next generations. There's a number of things that are in our platform, one of which is requiring the banks, which have done quite well during this pandemic, generating in the neighborhood of $10 billion worth of revenues, and I think that's long overdue and quite appropriate. We've been among the best debt to GP ratios in the world, and we're going to make sure that we're not leaving our kids with any unnecessary debt. I've sat in on a number of sessions with the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and our forecast had indicated that we, if necessary, we would support the economy for up to 2 years. Based on the independent assessment from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, we should be back to pre-pandemic economic levels within 18 months. And that's going to generate the capacity that we need to responsibly deal with the debt. And what's important with that is I don't intend to balance the financial budget at the expense of our social responsibilities. And I think that's an important balance that the Liberal Party has committed to and is quite prepared to undertake in the future in all that we do.
Thank you. The next question will be put first to Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party, and it is, what is your position with respect to gun advocacy groups?
Can you repeat the last part, Rachel?
Certainly. What is your position with respect to gun advocacy groups?
So my position is that we have to do all we can to protect Canadians, and in large cities, we know that there is, there's been an increase in years when we haven't had some version of gun control. And so we do need to do this. I think if you have to balance the rights of people, protecting especially our young people from those types of violent deaths is very important. So we want to make sure that we get all assault rifles off our streets, that they no longer exist, that illegal handguns are no longer in people's.
We have a bit of a freeze, so let's wait a couple of
A lot of
seconds.
this illegal gun trade is happening. So, oh, okay. We do have a bit of a storm coming in where I am. Did you hear everything I said?
Maybe
Okay.
the last couple of sentences, we'll extend your time a little bit. I think we lost
Okay.
a little. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm essentially saying that we need to protect lives and young lives, especially at any cost. And I think, there's no reason for people to have assault rifles. Illegal handguns are problematic as well. But we also want to get at the root of the problem, where we know that guns are coming illegally across the border. And so there's a lot we can do there. So it's really about, I guess some people might say, competing rights, but I will always choose and put the right of people's lives, especially when we're talking about the types of guns that are completely unnecessary for anyone's protection or day-to-day living.
Thank you. Tim Flemming, Green Party, would you speak to that, please?
I echo a lot of things, honestly, that Yvonne says. I mean, we live in a democracy, we live in a community environment. Our rights have to extend and are critically important, but not to the point of impairing another Canadian citizen. And we've evolved to a state now where there's, risk and danger in a lot of places on our streets. We need to separate significantly between certainly the sportsman, the responsible firearm protector, the rifle that's used in fire, and the common criminal element that is using it and is unfortunately putting our whole environment at risk. Our borders we must respect. Protect Canadians first, for sure, of the product moving in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around there. All assault rifles, there's no reason for them. There's no need. I'm reiterating it. There's nothing. And then at the end of the day, if there's a sporting requirement, do them to secure cabinets, lock the facilities, and let's turn this page. Let's get this so it's no longer a discussion at political events, and we can move on to issues of more significance because we put this one to bed. Done.
Thank you. If I could please ask Tony Van Bynen, Aurora Newmarket Liberal Party, to speak to this.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with my other two colleagues. There's absolutely no place for these guns in our community. We've banned and we've strengthened the controls on rifles. Assault rifles are not needed anywhere in our community. And with respect to the handguns getting in the hands of youth, we've invested very heavily in allowing municipalities through the province to make programs available that give youth other options as opposed to getting involved in these guns and gangs. So we've stood our ground when the Conservative Party seems to be allowing others to influence their direction, which we think is all wrong. And we've invested in youth, and we've provided our communities with options so that we have a healthier approach to our communities. So I think we're all agreed. There's just simply no place for guns in our community.
Thank you. And if we were live, I would say don't sit down so quickly, because you're up next, Tony, for the next question. And it is, as MP, what would you do locally? And what would your party do federally to take concrete action towards reducing our carbon footprint?
Thank you. That's a great question. First and foremost, I'd like to say that experts have said that we're the only party with an effective climate plan that will surpass our Paris targets. We've put a price on pollution. We've banned coal and more. We've been endorsed by the former leader of the BC Green Party just this morning, who said that ours is the climate plan that he's waited for his whole working life. You know, we're eliminating single-use plastics, and in the process, we're going to be creating 42,000 jobs. And we're requiring that all plastics must contain at least 50% recycled materials by 2030. We're implementing the right to repair to extend lives of appliances. I don't know if many of you have gone out to the dump. There's so many appliances that could have been repaired that end up in the dump by mistake, or that shouldn't be there. You know, we've started the Zero Accelerator Fund, and that's going to convert some major users to zero emissions. And there are some examples of recent announcements that we've made with steel companies that are converting to electric furnaces. And we've also agreed that we will be putting forward grants of $5,000 per home for homes for retrofits, as well as an interest-free loan of up to $40,000 for retrofits to reduce GHGs. And I'm exceptionally proud of some of the projects that are being initiated to pursue that, like the NEAR program here in Newmarket, where they're looking at a social enterprise.
I think that was time.
No,
Tony is muted.
Are you back, Tony?
I'm sorry, where did we leave off?
Oh, maybe about 3 sentences ago, a social enterprise in Newmarket.
Okay.
Can you pick up there? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm excited about the NEAR project, which is a social enterprise proposal in Newmarket. They're working on a business case where we will be engaging marginalized communities and youth and giving them an opportunity to learn about the environment and creating jobs.
Thank you. Yvonne Kelly, Aurora Newmarket NDP, would you speak to this, please?
Okay, yes, so the question's about carbon, and so at the national, federal, and also the local level. So I think this is an area where our party is really determined to reduce our carbon emissions. And unfortunately, Canada's emissions have gone up since the Paris Agreement, and we've never met a single emissions reduction goal. So I think what we have to do at the larger level, at the federal level, is really critical. And we have to stop giving money to subsidize fossil fuel companies. So that would be a very first thing that I would want us to do, and start to really enforce carbon tax at the larger level, to really not let the big polluters off the hook, because it's those on the other end that really aren't creating the type of climate emergency that we have, that we're facing right now. And so that's where I would start. And also make sure that we can get to 2030 by reducing our emissions to half. So carbon pricing was one thing. The other thing is just, I think it's already been mentioned, but, investing in affordable homes with retrofitting, so that, will also reduce emissions. And I think at the local level, I would want to take leadership we're talking about a youth climate corps, and really in giving information and education and training our young people to get involved in local projects that they can help to really affect change on, and also be the champions for. Because what I find with this conversation, especially at the local level, is and probably in communities right across Canada, is there's a real lack of understanding, and just that knee-jerk pushback against any kind of tax, when it's so important, and it really doesn't affect those of us at the middle and lower income levels, and shouldn't, because it's our big polluters that are really have gotten us into this situation. So educate, local projects, and then the bigger things.
Thank you, Yvonne. Tim, would you unmute yourself, because I cannot set it up. Can you unmute yourself? Perfect. Would you speak to this question? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's great to hear the other folks, and the Conservatives as well, who aren't here, talk about the steps. And I'm really excited. I mean, because for me, the end justifies the means. I don't care how we get there. I just want to get there. Having said that, in this particular case, actions are much more significant than words. And a historical downfall, not only the last 6 years, of the last 30, we can't continue it. So the first thing I mentioned to you at the introduction was about a green future. And I'm going to look at the green as and opportunity. Quite often it's viewed as the things we have to change. Yes, we have to change that. But, you know, the real great thing is a green future. If we go to the right manner of renewable energy, we've got a great place to add to our economy. Canada, with the single biggest hydroelectric freshwater source hydroelectricity, has an opportunity to be a significant leader in the world in this space. So we need to change. As was mentioned, I mean, the dichotomy of funding a pipeline that we all own now, by the way, everyone owns a piece of it now, is ridiculous. You know, we need to get on that $4.5 billion. Imagine what could be done in a positive way. So, you know, great place, you know, renewable energy, all the way to go, transportation, obviously infrastructure changes. It's the only way that's positive. This is also very good for business. The end goal says, yes, you'll have less insurance costs, less you won't be fighting 270 fires in British Columbia. Yes, you won't have 815 people die over the heat dome in British Columbia. There's so many things. We need to move in this, folks. We don't have time. The time is now. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. The next question, don't go away, because the next question goes right back to you again. And it is, what is your party's position on electoral reform, in particular, proportional representation, so that everybody's vote counts?
Yes. Yes. You know, think about it. We've seen the polls for the last week. You know, I looked at it 10 minutes beforehand. 151 seats tentatively for the Liberal, and the Liberals and Conservatives in a dead heat. It's not correct. It's a mismanagement of our individual Canadians' ability. The other thing is, it also comes down to the credibility of the representation of Canadians. Last time it was article number 1. It's in the Green Party. It's in other platforms. But the Liberals made a commitment and ran on it that it was going to absolutely change. It didn't. It didn't at all, because quite honestly, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit mathematically with the regeneration of the number of seats. People in a democracy as thriving as ours, we need proportional representation is the only equitable way to go. It's right, it's honest, it's fair. Democracies around the world, not all, but democracies around the world, many have embraced it to great success, and it gives a much better voice to the people. So I guess you could say I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now go to Tony Van Bynen, Aurora Newmarket Liberal Party.
Thank you. Well, I, for one, believe that we should also always take a look at improvements in any system or any process. And I do think that it's something that we should look at. I'm not sure that proportional representation is the only solution. I don't know what got in the way of looking at that, since I wasn't in the House at the time. I think we should be looking at reviewing it, but we should be doing it in consultation, broadly consulting with our communities and broadly looking at the options that are available. Yes, every organization, every society should take a look and see if there are better ways to accomplish the representation that we need so that our government looks like the people it represents. I think that's an important commitment on behalf of our party. And I think that that will be done. As to when that can be accomplished, I think we have a number of very critical priorities ahead of us immediately that we need to deal with. We need to get on top of the pandemic, and we need to make sure that we get back into an economic environment where people feel safe, have a place to call home, know that there's a meal on the table. But I don't rule it out. I think we should look at it.
Thank you very much. And Yvonne Kelly, Aurora Newmarket, New Democratic Party. Would you speak to this, please?
Yep, I would love to. I'll try not to repeat a lot of Tim's comments, but I know you don't know why, Tony, that it didn't happen, but I guess I have to say, as someone who's taken a strong interest in democratic representation my entire life, probably the most disappointing broken promise of your leader was this one, that we would never again have another election in Canada without a different type of electoral reform, without getting rid of the archaic first past the post system. And here's the reason why. I think that, you know, in lots of ways, the system that we have now, number one, I have no guarantee that I'm going to be represented. And that's only by a slim margin. Someone wins by a slim margin and the rest of us don't have any representation. It also breeds cynicism. So I feel like a lot of people feel that because of that, they just don't vote. So it does suppress democracy to some extent. And I think we need to do everything we can to encourage people to embrace democracy and fight for it and do whatever they can. And we see south of the border what's happening when those kinds of things happen. I'm worried, for example, right now that we aren't having polls at the campuses for students to vote. And that was, you know, the result of a snap election. The other thing I just want to say, though, too, people that aren't happy about the fact that we're having an election at an undesignated time when we really weren't prepared for it, this doesn't happen nearly as much. I think we've had 4 such elections in the last 15, 20 years under this system. In other countries where they do have proportional representation, maybe 0, 1. So it also eliminates that risk and eliminates, I think to me, it's about people's vote counting and also about addressing cynicism in politics, because it's there and we want to do everything we can to restore people's faith in it.
Thank you, Yvonne. Don't go away because you're first up on the next question. What ideas are being presented by your party to help prop up our ailing healthcare system?
Oh, you gave me 2 favorites in a row, Risha. Thank you so much. So our healthcare system, let's start with the fact that, you know, traditionally, healthcare costs were shared by the federal government and the provinces 50-50. And for the last 16 years, that's gone to 22%. The Conservatives cut $36 billion out of health transfer benefits when they were in power not so long ago, and the Liberals have not restored that. In fact, they've continued with a series of cuts. And so, number one, if we're going to have a system where we have certain standards, but we also allow the provinces to bear the bulk of responsibility, we have to make sure that we restore full funding, because the other thing that's happening in this case is that we're seeing a creeping we're seeing this move towards privatization. And we know if anyone's gone for some type of treatment, or you find out when you're needing to get something that, oh, that isn't covered anymore by OHIP. So we need to reinvest. And again, I'll go back to how we do that. We have to reinvest in healthcare because we have to stop giving oil and gas subsidies. We have to stop buying pipelines. We have to start taxing people in a fair and progressive way. Not those of us that are making under 200,000, because those folks already paying our fare. We cannot bear that price, that cost on them. 87 families in Canada make as much money, have as much wealth as 12 million lower income Canadians. So we have to redress that so we can reinvest in healthcare, so we can bring in pharmacare, so that healthcare now is not just what we typically have always expected it to be, but it's eye care, it's dental care, it's mental health care. This is the 21st century. This is the year 2020. We know what that means and what it means. And if there's nothing better to invest in than the health of Canadians.
Thank you. Tim Flemming, Green Party of Canada, would you speak to this, please? You're
muted.
You're muted. Perfect.
Sorry about that. We recognize that, thank you to the NDP party and Tommy Douglas many years ago. You know, certainly, we have in many ways a medical system that's the envy of many countries in the world, certainly the G7 and more. But as alluded to, it's when you peel back the onion, it's not nearly as equitable as it appears to be at first blush. So we need to have something that treats certainly those that are, whether it be impoverished or our Indigenous family members, our fellow citizens, and folks that maybe have a little bit less or live in a remote area with all of the same access to a full framework. And they do include, particularly some of the things that Yvonne mentioned, but as well, in 2021, mental health has become a very, very significant issue. And we have to have access and give the right treatment to enable people to live their lives fully and fulsome. It's going to require investment, but the reality is investment up front, honestly, will have a better outcome at the end of the day, many, many years down the road, and people will live more fulsome lives, be able to be healthy financial contributors, taxpayers, all of those kind of things in the right way if they have access to healthy, fulsome thing. But we need to make those choices now. And, and I think it's a very good and necessity.
Thank you very much. And we'll now go to Tony Van Bynen, Aurora Newmarket Liberal Party of Canada.
Great, thank you. First and foremost, we're going to stand up against the privatization of the public health system. This is, I think, a world-recognized healthcare system that we should all be proud of, and we can't allow that to be eroded by what's being proposed by other parties. With respect to what we've learned in COVID, and I was on the health committee, it's laid bare a lot of inequities. It's laid bare a lot of inconsistencies that might have been cloaked by a buoyant economy. We've made commitments to invest $6 million on top, or $6 billion on top of the $4 billion to eliminate the wait lists in healthcare. We're going to be hiring 7,500 family doctors with a $3.2 billion investment over 4 years. We're providing $400 million over 4 years to expand the virtual healthcare services. So we can deliver healthcare in a more efficient way and probably more to more remote areas. We'll be recruiting healthcare professionals and providing them with student loan forgiveness so if they locate into remote communities. And we'll be offering tax credit incentives for professionals to help reduce the cost of setting up practices in rural areas. So we're very much committed to a robust, sustainable, and healthy healthcare system. And I think the commitments that are in our platform will go a long way to make it the type of healthcare system that continues to be world renowned.
Thank you very much, Tony. The next question will go to Yvonne Kelly first, and it is, would you support a boycott of imports from China in an effort to free the two Michaels? If not, what would you do to free these men?
Are you on mute?
I would support that. I think we have to, and Doug Mead's talked very openly about standing up to China and to human rights abuses and to being kind of taken hostage virtually. Critical even when it's two people, but it's also just drawing that line in the sand. And so I think we have to live our truth. We have to stand up to the powerful. I think the NDP have always kind of had that in our backpack, right? We're are pretty practiced at standing up and saying what others won't do. So I want.
Okay, sorry, Yvonne, have you finished? Your mute came on. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
perfect.
No, I can see why you're saying that because the storm's brewing, and if my camera.
It's okay, as long as you finished your sentence and your thoughts, that's great. If I could move next to Tim Flemming, Aurora, Newmarket, Green Party of Canada.
Sure. Yeah, but directly to the question, no, I wouldn't support certainly what I would call an import embargo. I used to have the distinct pleasure of traveling back and forth to China on business a lot. And, I want to be very tactful. Our minutia. Our trade balance is insignificant, and that would do 0.0 to influence at all the Senior Communist Party. Not at all. Having said that, What would I do? Absolutely right now, it's the 5G network. You have to hit them where it's going to hurt. So you make the sizable. We should know we are the last and only G7 country to still be indecisive on what we're going to do with the 5G network. We're accepting the Huawei, technology. That will be more damaging than anything, and that would be very influential in the decision making. I'm not a lawyer. I can't stand up and say about the right of law, not right of law, all those sort of things. But there's certainly, from a discussion standpoint, I would suggest whoever is our elected prime minister should get on a plane, fly right to Beijing in a prearranged meeting and have a discussion. That's the way to do it. Meet face to face and have some common ground. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Tim. And Tony Van Bynen, Aurora Newmarket Liberal Party of Canada, would you speak to this, please?
Thank you. First and foremost, yes, we do need to stand up to China, but I'd suggest to you that this is a very complex situation and needs to be managed carefully in the context of our global relationships. Thank you.
The next question will go to Yvonne first. The Conservatives are willing to grant more powers to Quebec if elected. One of them is immigration. Do you support a more decentralized federal government where more powers are given out to the provinces? Yes or no?
So is it a yes or no and then expand?
The community member who submitted it said, please just answer yes or no.
No.
Okay. Tim, would you respond to that one, please?
No.
And Tony, would you respond?
That's a no.
Thank you. See, we get one more question in this way because this was so fast.
But
The
that's such a great question. But it's
The next question is a little bit longer and it's a bit of a double header, so everybody listen close. Healthcare is a provincial issue, but it has federal support. We received 2 questions related to the federal response to healthcare, and I'm going to ask them together because they speak to whether your party sees a place for the federal government in the provision of provincial healthcare. So the 2 questions that came in, and they were personal questions from the community. One of them was, maternal mental health issues such as postpartum depression and anxiety affect 1 in 4 families. What is your party doing to advance perinatal mental health in Canada? The second question was, nurses at South Lakes ICU say that working practices are unsafe and patients' lives are being put at risk through the team-based nursing model. Should we be concerned? Both of the community members acknowledge the fact that healthcare is provincial, but also acknowledge the fact that there is an oversight of federal. So I've bundled them together, and the first person is Tony.
Oh, thank you. And I think that's what makes it a difficult challenge, is the fact that it's a shared responsibility, shared mandate. I genuinely believe, and I've learned a lot through this pandemic from the interviews that we've had and studied in terms of what could we do better. There's clearly, I think, a separate role for the federal government and the provincial government. I think that with respect to the long-term care element, we found that there definitely is a need to establish federal standards, and they need to be negotiated in a way that it is workable with our relationship with the provinces. There are plenty of things that could be improved. Mental health, of course, is one of them, and the way that we were able to respond to the emergent and urgent issue of mental health, one which I proposed an immediate study with the health committee, and I intend to bring that back during the next session. But we need to make sure that there's a shared responsibility that is clearly defined and that the outcomes that the federal government is seeking should be the basis on which the funding is generated. So put some accountability into the funding and make sure that the priorities that we've established, healthcare or mental health, is definitely one that I would be strongly advocating for and intend to continue to do so.
Thank you. Yvonne, can I put the question to you, please?
Can you read the second question again? Because the first one I've got clear in my head, the second one I'm not so clear on.
Certainly. Nurses at South Lakes ICU say that working practices are unsafe and patients' lives are being put at risk through the team-based nursing model. Should we be concerned?
We should be really concerned. I'm going to answer that first question first, because I've actually spoken with nurses in the emergency room, and in many cases their workloads, especially under a pandemic situation, and after the hospital had let go a lot of nurses a year or so ago, it has exacerbated to the point where people are completely ridden with fear and worry that they're not giving good quality care. So I think we need to listen to the nurses in this case. And this is the only hospital in the province that's actually using this model. So not sure where the evidence base came from for it, but I am really concerned just having spoken to people at the hospital because they're worried they're not being able to give good quality care. They're managing other residents or other nursing folks who are coming in who are not sufficiently trained, as well as taking care of very ill patients. And so in some cases, their caseloads have risen from 1 to 4. As far as the mental health care piece, absolutely. We want to see mental health care considered part of healthcare, how it was ever not considered that. It's shocking to think that 1 in 4 families, specifically around postpartum, are dealing with that, which can be debilitating for not just a mother, but for the entire family. So it's just another reason why mental health care has to be included in that basket of services. I agree with Tony that there's a role for the federal government when it comes to regulation and setting standards, especially in things like long-term care. So maybe in this area as well. So the NDP is prepared to invest heavily in funding, but also work with the provinces to expand access to services in communities right across the country, because that's something you have to do absolutely to be able to do that. And I think, we want to restore funding back to that 50-50 level, which, we don't know why that was changed, but if provinces are going to do this work that we're going to decide is a critical piece, we need to make sure they have the funding to do it properly.
Thank you. Tim Flemming, Aurora, Newmarket, Green Party, if you'd respond. Thank you.
Just on the federal provincial first, for sure, I believe the federal government has a role to supply necessary funds, fund new initiatives, and set regulations. Then let the folks at the front lines operate what is necessary for that community. That right between there and the federal, we have provincial, we have LINs, we have regionals, we have too much bureaucracy in the middle, way too much. So we need to invest our funds, quite honestly, in the front where we need it. And this is where we're getting into the difficulty. From the 2 absolute scenarios you alluded to, like the mental health, absolutely. We're a big time. The Green Party believes in having a national advocacy program that distinctly addresses these issues for whether it be indigenous folks, whether it be for youth, which are often forgotten and have suffered horribly throughout their pandemic, and as well, certainly through any of the other, primarily the female postpartum groups. When it comes to nursing, yeah, I won't say, but I actually my partner, my wife, is a nurse at South Lake. The model is very difficult. They're just starting it. It's financially, again, to some degree. It's a financial issue where, they're trying to go with, it was unsuccessful as a program 30, 35 years ago. They're trying to bring it back again. We have to be very, very careful, and it puts an extreme stretch on the registered nurse. So what we need to do, comes all the way back, is to invest in, make this an appealing profession, because we all embrace it. We all love nursing. We all love nurses. We all have folks that we exchange them. So we have to really make the RNs, the RNAOs, the support workers, that is a really important, critical profession. It's the ones that carry the thing. So that's really that is the impetus that makes the difference. So.
Thank you. You know, you folks have been so wonderful that I have a special question for the very end, but I'm going to pull one from my email that I didn't think we were going to get to because I really like it. And we have enough time for me to put it to you. And the question is, despite being one of the most highly educated workforces in the world, many young people have struggled with finding employment in the Canadian economy. If elected, how would your party support and encourage young people to find worthwhile employment in their fields of study? And if we could start with Tim Flemming, Green Party of Canada.
You use the word, and it's true. You use the word encourage, and that is the great word. But I think it's up to a governmental platform to, I'll say, initiate, inspire, let's say, some of the directions. That comes from training in some of the most critical environments that are going to be for 2025 and beyond. The compensation model needs to be such that jobs that, as it just alluded to, jobs that we may be paying totally inappropriate to how we value them, we may need to adjust that compensation to a much more reasonable level. I think we need to level set, relatively things that are actually paid properly, and some which have a non-taxable income stream, to figure that out, because that also, we should be equitable across that space. And I think really we're so fortunate for young people to be able to go into the technology and the renewable energy space. I come back at that again. That is world-beating, world record-breaking stuff. Kids, if we set it right, position it right, inspire the right companies to want to stay home in Canada and to invest reasonably and profitably, they will want to indeed be employed and be employed here. So, because they're great, they're a good asset.
Thank you. Tony Van Bynen, Liberal Party of Canada, if you would speak to this, please.
Great, thank you. I think one of the key opportunities that are before us lie in making improvements to our environment and making investments in those areas. And I think that there's some great opportunities also in the digital economy as well. So investing in those two areas to give students an opportunity. We do have some programs that will be inviting students to be part of the GHG emissions and testing homes for retrofits as a start. There are programs like MyTag, and we have introduced an opportunity for digital transformation for businesses that will be employing students. And a great example, just in Newmarket here alone, we created during the summer months 298 jobs with just a little over $2 million directly offering students opportunities, summer jobs for summer experiences. And that's been invaluable. I think in many cases, I've had a chance to meet with many of them. And it's a great assistance to the employers because they get an opportunity to look at the student, their value, their work ethics, and there's many jobs that have come out of these Canada Summer Jobs programs. So yes, we need to invest in industries and opportunities that are focused on future opportunities like environmental businesses, like digital businesses, and global economies.
Thank you. Yvonne, would you answer this question, please? Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party.
Well, having 4 and almost 5 young people who've gone through post-secondary, and 2 that have been very fortunate to find something that they loved and was able to find work in it, and others that are still struggling. I know this, I live with this reality. I think it goes back to, I think Tim was alluding a little bit to prevention, or not prevention, but earlier intervention in this whole piece. So it's about workforce development. It is about offering incentives and investing targeted investments in industries that need workers, like skilled workers. But also it doesn't change the fact that a lot of our young people went to university without really a clear idea, or maybe they did have a clear idea and the jobs aren't there. So how do we help them to at least expand and find these other opportunities to grow their skills and transfer their skills to other industries? So I think we have to do more in terms of research. I think we also have to look at industries that like the trades and like I talked to people from the Ontario Federation of Labor the other day, and they said any graduate from Guelph agricultural program has 4 job offers when they leave. So I don't know that we do a really good job of really making sure that young people have a real clear idea of all the opportunities that are out there. So I think we can do a better job of even helping our schools and our provinces make these opportunities better known. But the other thing I would do is when students are coming out of university and they want to find that first job, when they're saddled with debt, when they're so worried and stressed that they can't afford a place to live, we need to be paying attention to that. So we will forgive up to $20,000 in student debt, give people 5 years grace in terms of repaying that debt, and really try and move away from move more to a grant instead of a loan situation, because it's not unlikely that they might try other jobs, but what their worry is they've invested all this money and now they're not getting a job in their field to pay back the debt that they have. So we need to do that and take that pressure off them, and also do a lot to make sure that they know they're going to be able to afford a place to live. And I don't even mean buying. Renting is something that young people are really struggling with. So it's a comprehensive solution to one problem.
Thank you. The next question is a perfect question to end on, and it is, what one thing in particular does your party bring to the table for Canadians that the other parties do not? If we could start with Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party of Canada.
Well, that's a really good one. I mean, I think a lot of the things we talked about tonight, everybody's got a position on it. I did mean it when I said something earlier that I'm constantly surprised why the other parties, especially the large parties, are never wanting to talk about how we're going to revise and reform our tax system. And I think there's something in that, right? And so I feel like in a country where we pay the highest taxes, or we pay the incredible high childcare costs, we pay the most for pharmaceutical goods, and we have opportunities to do something about that, to stand up to pharmaceutical companies and be able to get a good cost by combining our purchasing power. And we have a chance to reform our tax system instead of throwing our hands in the air and saying there's nothing we can do. I mean, I'm not going to even blame a large business for taking advantage of loopholes, because guess what? That's what the government allowed for. So I think the NDP are strongest on looking at ways of generating wealth, looking at ways that don't burden those who are already struggling and have been disenfranchised throughout our economy and throughout for many, many years. So I think we really need to look at tax reform. And we also don't talk a lot about crown corporations. We do, because we know it's a way of being able to recoup profits, raise revenue, pay for the things that Canadians need, whether that's, when we look at the 404 highway, we bought that and we're still paying for it, and we will pay for it forever because it doesn't belong to us, and we're paying a foreign business for that highway. That's nothing the NDP government would ever do. We would raise revenues by, for example, owning our own cellular, making our own pharmaceuticals, making sure that we can achieve those savings and pass those on to Canadians so that they can make ends meet, because it's a very difficult time. So we need to, again, it sounds old school, tax the rich, make sure that we're putting that money back in, and just get people to pay their fair share, especially the bigger corporations, Amazon, the telecom companies. It's ludicrous to me that we aren't talking about this more, and I will continue to talk about it until I'm probably even older than I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Flemming from the Aurora Newmarket Green Party of Canada.
Just one idea.
I take the questions that our community sends in. I don't edit them.
Yeah, no problem. No, the one thing I think that, and it sounds lecturing, so I'm going to try and be careful about it, but the one thing I think the Green Party is different is, and they're small, they came from, obviously the world of hugging trees, and that's what it came from, and it's grown and grown and grown. They come now to a place with integrity and trying to do what they say they're going to do. And to me, the difference, and anything when you're going to be the leader or leaders of the country, you just simply have to do what you're going to say you're going to do. We can't, if we added up all of the promises so far in the party, we talked 8 questions ago, obviously, about whether we could fund the deficit. We know the promises are things that live and die for elections, but we need to do what we're going to do. Those simple things. That's why I was so emphatic starting out with, the 30 million bucks that we might have to spend on water to get this behind us. It's a rounding error. That's what it is. And then you get credibility. Then you get credibility and respect among the citizens and around the world. We just went through a period. We didn't talk about Afghanistan tonight. Thank you. I'm glad we didn't. But the reality is if we want to be respected, we have to do what we commit to we're going to do and what we say always. That's what I think the Green Party is a little bit different.
Thank you, Tim. I'd like to now call upon Tony Van Bynen, Liberal Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora.
Great, thank you. I think if there's anything that clearly differentiates us from all of the other parties, it's our plan to make $10 a day childcare a reality in Newmarket and Aurora. And we know that it's the right thing to do, both from a social perspective and an economic perspective, by allowing parents, particularly women, to get back to work. Our estimates are that it'll add 240,000 people to the workforce and create 120,000 new spaces. And we know that the business model is right. For every dollar that was invested in the Quebec model, it generated $1.5 to $2.8 as far as economic benefits go. And we'll create hundreds of thousands of new spaces, which will create good jobs across the country, unlike what the CPC said they won't do. And I need to say is that we've heard over and over again that this pandemic has created a she-cession, and we need to create an opportunity for these bright, intelligent, innovative women to get back into the workforce and add substantially to the recovery.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our event. Thank you to Tony Van Bynen, Liberal Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora. Yvonne Kelly, New Democratic Party, Newmarket, Aurora. Tim Flemming, Green Party of Canada, Newmarket, Aurora. Thank you to our attendees for your very intelligent questions, engagement in the democratic process. Don't forget to vote. Good night and stay safe.
Good night, all.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Bye.